and I'm happy to be here again. We're going to be going straight into this second session. It will be my privilege and honor to invite the panelists. And I'd just like to crave your indulgence, audience, please. If you are outside, you could please come in now because we are going straight away to the second session so that we can wrap up as quickly as possible. So in this panel, we'll be focusing on bridging the digital divide, leveraging on AI for inclusive growth. And on the panel, we have a number of brilliant and interesting people with a lot of industry experience to share with us. First, I would like to invite Mr. Abdul Malik Adeyemo. Fund Us AI, right?
Yes.
Mr. Well, I don't know if this is Mr. But Undu Ekwomadu must be female. Is Undu Ekwomadu here, please? Would that be you? All right. You're welcome. Undu is a unisex name, right?
Yes. I don't know about that.
Oh, you don't know. Okay. Or is it short for Undu BC? All right. We'll see to that. Then next I have Atnel Ndugi. That's supposed to be online. Reporters, please, if Mr. Ndugi is online. Arome Ibrahim. Mr. Arome Ibrahim, please, you're welcome. Yeah, please sit here. I'm not sure. You're welcome. Sorry? Is Mr. Okay, Mr. Abel Viaguero online. Is Mr. Abel available? Can we project him now? Abel is joining us from Mozambique. So, Mr. Abel, you're welcome. Could you please say a word? Let's be sure your audio is fine.
I can hear you very well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for being here. Now that we are with Mr. Abel, I would like to start by introducing Abel Viaguero. He's an expert in AI for financial management. He also specializes in IoT and AI for essential services and has done a number of application enablement platforms using AI. You're welcome, and he's joining us from Mozambique. All right, Mr. Abdul Malik is from Fund Us AI. Fund Us AI focus on data science, AI-powered health services again, healthcare, and a sensor-based investment security project called TriKey. Correct? All right, great. Thank you. It looked like is a project you've forgotten or something?
No, I mean, we're talking about Fund Us AI and then we went into the second one, so.
Okay, that's fine. We just listed a number of your very successful projects. I'm sure you have time to talk to us about your project. Then Undu Ekwomadu, another person with AI-powered solution for business growth, is a UX design, e-commerce, and digital payment specialist, expert. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And then Mr. Arome is also had a lot of experience with extended reality, human-centered AI, and democratizing technology access. Okay, looks like you're the one that will solve the 2031 problem. All right, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I'd like to start this question with Mr. Arome Ibrahim, and then we'll just take it from where we stopped at the last panel. So, okay, I have a suggestion that maybe one person should sit here. But I wanted these seats free because of the screen, actually, so that it also doesn't obstruct. Because I know there are going to be some online people, so that's fine. Mr. Arome Ibrahim, I like the fact that you're talking about democratizing technology and digital access, because that really speaks to the heart of inclusion. And I want to see my personal project work in 2031. You know, politicians campaign in every language. And from what Doctor said earlier, a lot of young people don't like to engage government and engage policy. But from what we now know, which I want to believe we all now know, that government people have a way of changing your life for good or for worse, right? Right? So we now at least know that government, with the power, the collective power and social contract in their hand, can decide, take decisions that affect all of us. So it's therefore important to engage that process more and ensure that growth is a lot more inclusive. So if you may, close with a promise of taking on that project, but tell us, what do we even mean when we talk about inclusive growth, and how does AI speak to that?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. First off, I'll start by giving an overview of what I do. Like I said, my name is Arome Ibrahim. I'm the Executive Director of Immersive Tech Africa. And Immersive Tech Africa is a non-profit organization, and our goal is to increase access to emerging technologies. I will pick two, which is extended reality, virtual reality and augmented reality, and also AI, which just started for us this year. And for us, inclusion is big, it's pivotal. And what we're doing is, like some of the speakers said earlier, we are going through the grassroots to make sure that tech is onboarded and adopted at the early ages. For example, my brother, who is in secondary school, was given an assignment to draw the human skeleton. He cannot go to the hospital to find a human skeleton to draw. And for us is, how can we now empower students across public and private schools to see what they are learning in the classroom? And what we did was to create an app called EduXR, whereby a teacher can project a 3D model of a human skeleton in the classroom. So my brother now can learn how to draw a human skeleton in detail using that experience. So for us, inclusion is very big, but I feel we need to build tech at our own level. Some of the speakers earlier said tech is moving so fast. AI is here to stay. But how are we building it at our own level? How are Africans leveraging the tech to make impact in key sectors? For us, we are very big on education. We are very big on training, and also particularly art and culture. Our languages are going extinct. Africa has one of the largest base of UNESCO heritage sites on the continent, close to 140. But some of us cannot physically go to those sites. Right? The goal is now, how can we now use this tech to showcase to the world that Africa is here to stay, and they can indeed engage with our arts, culture, and heritage in a unique way.
Thank you very much. If Abel is online, I'll be coming to you shortly. I'd like to get some perspective of what obtains in Mozambique. But before I go to Abel, whom I will be asking basically the same question as you, Abdul Malik, the concept of digital divide, I know it looks like you're passionate about funding or Fundus AI. I'm just guessing you have a chance to tell us what you do in the first question. This digital divide, what really is digital divide? We know there is geographical divide, economic divide. We know there are many people committed to the ideas and ideals of digital literacy. And I've heard someone describe education as uneducated, educated, and then undereducated. So is that what speaks to digital divide, or is it something completely different, so that we can appreciate this a little bit more as we engage this topic.
All right, thank you very much. So I guess I'm going to talk about two things. First is what we do at Fundus AI, and then the second one has to do with the question about digital divide, right? So Fundus AI is basically Africa's first AI-powered ecosystem that makes personalized diabetes care affordable and accessible. So currently, right now in Nigeria, we have more than 11 million diabetic individuals, and it's impossible for any one of them to actually get access to personalized care. And the reason for that is because there's no way a diabetic individual goes into a hospital and then the hospital have a track record of what they've been doing and how it has been affecting their health. And the complexity of diabetes states that you actually need those data to be able to provide personalized care for every diabetic individual, which whatever they do affect each and every one separately, right? But because we do not have that present, there's really no way to provide that care for them. Now, what we are doing at Fundus AI is gamifying the process in which patients are able to store their own health record data. What that looks like is what I eat during breakfast, how does that affect my blood sugar level, my blood pressure, how does my physical activities affect my blood sugar level, my blood pressure, and what is the effect of rice on my blood sugar level in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening, which it actually varies from person to person, right? Now, when they store the data on our platform, then with our AI system, they're able to get personalized insight on, or if you want to maintain certain health metric, this is what you should do. And this is because this is based on the data that you've been storing on the platform so far. And it's interesting that when you then go to hospitals, instead of your doctors having to tell you, okay, don't eat before coming so that you can do a fasting blood sugar level, you don't have to do that because you have your health metrics stored over the course of certain months, and the doctor can take a look at the data, and that would allow them to provide a more informed decision. Now, how do we make it affordable? Well, that's accessibility, but how do we make it affordable? For every time you store data on our platform, you get rewarded what is called points, which is where the gamification comes in, which you can then convert into vouchers for discount on medications. One of the greatest challenges with managing diabetes is the cost of buying the drugs, the medication itself. But what if we are able to make it more affordable by providing this discount, and in return, all you have to do is keep track of your health, right? And you also get access to personalized care. Now, is there any diabetic individual or anybody that knows a diabetic individual in the audience right now? I do. All right, so I would advise you go on to fundusai.com and sign up on the wait list so you can, get access to the ecosystem as soon as it launches, which one of our features will be launching in less than a month's time. So that would, give you access to personalized diabetes care. Now, for the second concern about what exactly is digital divide, I think you can understand it in several ways. One of the things is in terms of problem solving with tech, right? And this also brings about inclusiveness, right, into whatever solution you are building. So let's take, for instance, in education, for instance, right? There's always the talk about personalized learning. When I was in school, I know for a fact that I learned differently from my course-mates or from my classmates. Sometimes I don't attend the lectures because I know that I wouldn't really get anything from the class. Instead, I will stay back and actually learn the thing that they're about to actually teach in class. So which means everybody have different pace at which they learn, but it's not incorporated in our educational system. Everybody just sits in class and then you're being taught the same thing. Everybody comes back to write a test. And if you were to build a tech solution to actually solve that, which is where AI can actually thrive in making sure that you're learning at your own pace, the other person is learning at his or her own pace. If we do not make sure that we take into consideration every single use case that we have, that would lead to what you call the tech divide that we're talking about, right? And aside from that, if you're looking at the economic growth of a particular country, and we have all these problems that makes it difficult for us to actually grow economically. If we solve one problem without looking at the effect of another problem on the problem we're solving right now, it will also lead to the tech divide thing, because you have this problem you're solving with technology, but at the same time, there's another problem affecting what you are solving right now. So you're not really solving everything all at once, right? But if you're able to combine your solution or look at things, or basically what I thought would be a great thing to do is look at Nigerian problems as if you're looking at a startup, right? So because as a startup, you always have to look at the value chain of what you're trying to provide and see, okay, where are the problems that we can eliminate with technology, right? And if you eliminate one problem without eliminating the other one, you're basically just, playing around in the same circle. But without really looking at things objectively, there's really no way for you to be able to say you're providing a holistic solution that would lead to the tech, that wouldn't lead to tech divide, as you would call it, right?
Abdul Malik, I like the way you put it. Yes, there is digital divide, which is the concept of access and what people can do. But you introduced something I find a bit interesting, a lot interesting, which is, although you call it tech divide. And my interpretation, my understanding of what you say is that, yes, you can have access. It might seem like you are digitally included, but initiatives come on board, new technologies are introduced, and you are excluded from those new technologies. Yes, you are digitally aware, you are digitally inclusive, but you are now on the other side of the tech divide for this new technology. So that looks like that. We need to keep an eye on that for AI for Africa, isn't it?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. That's an interesting perspective. If Abel is available, I'm not sure if all right. So I'd like to hear from Abel the perspective of digital inclusion broadly from Mozambique. I know that statistically, Mozambique is one of the better digital inclusive countries in Africa, perhaps from the perspective of GDP per capita and the education model. But how inclusive is digital in Mozambique and your knowledge of the rest of Africa? Did you get the question, Abel?
Yes, I got the question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Yes, digital inclusion is an issue that Mozambique has been promoting. Actually, Mozambique is one of the pioneers in Africa to introduce internet in Africa. It's one of the first. And also, it has invested heavily in international connectivity through international fiber backbone. And we have quite a good coverage of countrywide backbone, and we even provide connectivity to inland countries. Yes, connectivity, digital inclusion is evolving. The number of people accessing internet through mobile device is very encouraging. It's almost 70%, and the number of people using mobile money like M-Pesa is almost also like 75% of the population, even with the base phones, but it's one step ahead. Financial inclusion is one of the prerequisites, also essential to make viable efforts for digital inclusion. Yes, in terms of the Africa, also I have a very positive perspective, because I believe that AI presents a great opportunity for Africa. Today, we are standing at a pivotal moment in African journey. The digital divide is real, but it's also a potential to bridge the digital divide. Here, for example, I view with great opportunities the potential of smart AI helpers. this, imagine, for example, having a personal expert available 24 hours, 7 days a week, speaking your language, understanding your unique challenges. That's what AI Smart Helpers can be for Africa. So this type of projects are now viable. How can they help? They can help breaking language barriers. In Africa, we have about 2,000 languages in Africa. So AI can be a universal translator. Now the technology has evolved to a stage that we can focus on that. It's possible to get a universal translator for our 2,000 African languages. It can also help democratize expertise from farming advice to basic healthcare. AI can make experts' knowledge accessible to all. And it can also help empowering the unconnected through innovations, innovative ways of solving the connectivity problem. We can bring AI to areas without traditional internet. And it can also help personalized solutions. So by focusing on AI helpers, we can adapt to individual, to family, to community needs, providing tailored support. So I believe that this matters because by putting expertise in the hands of everyone, we are not just fighting poverty, we will be unleashing the potential. Every farmer who increases yields, every entrepreneur who grows their business, every student who accesses quality education, they will all be part of Africa leaping ahead through leveraging on artificial intelligence. So I believe that we are in a pivotal moment, a very critical moment. So we Africans have to be focused, to build local, create AI solutions that understand our languages, cultures, and challenges, and also prioritize trust. Develop AI.
Abel, yes. I'd like to jump in and have you address some other component of what you're saying. Before now, we would see access and digital divide as merely issues related to access and basically using technology. Now, from your experience, I'd like to talk about the Cheetah project that you worked on, because I can see that it focused on addressing financial inclusion in really, really rural areas. It would be nice to share your experience, how that has worked, and if you may, there's something I've always wondered. Why is it that in embracing technology, especially around payment, some models or payment channels are successful in some part of Africa and they struggle to take off in other parts? And in those other parts, you see a greater adoption of some other channel options. So do you think there is something responsible for that? So talk to us about the Cheetah project and how it's able to drive penetration in rural areas, and why is it in different parts of Africa people tend to embrace or adopt different channels when it comes to the use of technology, especially around payment?
Well, the Cheetah project is a project still in progress. What we are doing, actually, we are implementing this concept of AI helpers. AI helper is a kind of AI software agent that is a kind of like a Microsoft Copilot, others call Copilot, or some kind of virtual assistant. Because by using a Copilot-like architecture, an agent-like architecture, we call AI secure AI smart helpers, because we can provide an interface so that people can interrogate, people can interact, can set some high-level goal to the agent, and the agent can help, overcome, fulfill those goals. For example, in the financial transactions, so by using this architecture of the Cheetah based on AI helpers, you can overcome language barriers, because we can integrate the language translation interface, Bantu voice typing, voice querying through this UI interface that is test-free, localized, test-free, that can use voice to interact with our applications. be it for financial transactions or any other task to be completed in our Cheetah-based application.
Thank you. So just the other part of the question, you didn't speak to that, but if you could tell us, in Mozambique, you say you have 75% penetration, internet, and then use of systems and platforms.
No, 75% is internet penetration of mobile connectivity. I mean, most are still using basic phone, dumb phone, or entry-level smartphone, but the number is still growing.
All right.
Actually, the 75% is mobile money, because we have mobile money called M-Pesa, eMola, M-Cash, 3 mobile network operators. Each one provides their mobile money solution, but they are interoperable between them.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. I'll come back to you before this session is over. Ndu, I'd like to come to you now. We have been hearing about digital divide, digital inclusion in Nigeria. Maybe because this term was driven largely by the financial ecosystem, and particularly by the regulator in that space, and to some extent supported by the other regulator in telco. But digital inclusion, financial inclusion has been a song in that space for the longest time. You have a strong background in payments. Do you see payment systems adoption helping Africa to bridge the digital divide as perhaps the window that lets the whole of Africa into a digitally included continent? And in this era of AI, are we likely to keep up with the changes in that space from your industry knowledge and experience?
So first of all, I think, yes, answering the last question, are we going to be able to keep up with that? Absolutely, we will. And that's for 2 reasons. First, Nigeria and Africa as a whole is rapidly evolving. And the benefit of that evolution is we would catch up faster than other people did or other continents did in a very long time. Just to give context, we have over 39 million businesses in Nigeria, generating an average of about $250 billion every single year. That's not for a while, just every single year. But we have a very big default, which is businesses don't keep records. So when you talk about can payments pave the way for us, the data we've seen tells a different story. It wouldn't necessarily be payments that will pave the way, but data will pave the way. And that's specifically because data lies in silos across Nigeria and across Africa. So for us, when you have an ecosystem that is, or a business entity or a business community generating that much volume in transactions, and you have about 20% of that volume lost because businesses don't keep records. So you see that the problem, so initially when we set out to start Brand Drive, our initial focus was on how can we be able to lead economic growth by powering global operations, but we're focused on the business intelligence side of things. But we got to encounter a different kind of problem, which is businesses don't even keep records in the first place. So how can you solve a problem by providing business intelligence when there is no records in the first place? So we had to go back to the grassroots by providing an infrastructure for financial management to let businesses do as simple as saying, I collected 100 Naira today, as little as that, or I spent 50 Naira today. And when we were able to solve that, then it means we've started generating enough data to be able to understand spending patterns, earning patterns, as you would see it. And inherently, we can now be able to provide intelligence of that part of the data. And this data can include financial, it can include transaction, it can include activities. And for me, I feel that's the major focus we need to basically keep our eyes on.
That's interesting. I'd like to stay with you because, you know, in the earlier panel, someone talked about startups pivoting, doing something else, and then coming back to their original goal, right? And of course, before the concept of startups, uh, modern startups, what we used to hear is that businesses start, write a whole business plan, and as soon as they start, they still throw away the business plan and do something else. Now, you've brought in the narratives around data and how data paraphrasing is the new oil, the new gold. How does data, getting sufficient data and making them available for people who want to try out models, research, because if there was public data, even if they are scrambled, you probably could have just gotten access to that and continue with your original mandate.
Absolutely.
Having access to such data instead of having to generate that. So how can that problem be solved? Do we need a law? Do we need a policy around that? Or should just private sector entity come together and come up with something and share a public version of some of the data they have, even if it's a reduced data set? What will help solve this problem and accelerate inclusion and growth?
So I think, first of all, we have to be very intentional. It's not something that can happen by chance or by virtue of the changes that are happening. Stakeholders that need to make it happen, and we're talking of the government, the private sector, founders like myself, everyone needs to kind of say we are willing to collaborate to be able to make this particular solution happen at the end of the day. But more importantly, I think the first thing to look at is, first of all, a lot of changes has happened in the last 5 years, right? COVID, for lack of a better word, created an eye-opener for the world. And what it meant was people are a lot more open to the ideologies of how data can play a very major impact in their business, no matter how small or big it can be. So definitely the policies have to be put in place, especially because you can't champion some kind of very strong change at that level without some measure of government intervention. However, the private sector needs to drive a lot of narrative to show why it's necessary. If possible, even show some very good stories that come out of that. I'll give a key example. So from time to time, on our end, we've basically shared how businesses have driven tremendous impact in their businesses. We're talking about like 270% growth in a quarter, some of them spanning almost close to about 320% growth, simply by just looking into the data and making decisions off of that data. A very practical example would be businesses that chose to invest a little bit in, let's say, alternative power supply, as against spending a lot more on utilizing the traditional diesel or fuel. And that basically has helped them become more efficient, save them a lot of costs, which they can maybe diversify into some other part of their business and become more profitable. So these measures can go from as little as that to as major as saying, I want to shut down an entire branch of my business because maybe I'm making more money from, so I invest about, let's say, 10 million naira in my digital advertising. That skyrockets my sales as a business person to about, let's say, 45 million in 3 months. But I have my rent usually for, let's say, about 20 million. Would I keep investing in that, spending that amount of money every single year, as against diversifying the measures I take? So I think ultimately, those success stories can champion some kind of evolution that would also be a signal to the government to say, from a private sector perspective, we've seen the right signal, and now we can adapt the right policies to make this happen.
Thank you, Ndu. I like the way this is going. Abdul Malik, I'd like to extend the conversation. So Ndu has painted a picture where as we get people onboarded into the ecosystem of whatever sector they are in and the data that is being generated, we can go back to these businesses and show them what the data can do for their business or whatever services they offer. But this needs to be done at a micro level, because you talked earlier about digital inclusion and then technology inclusion. I'm sure that's the phrase you use, right? It seems to me that if we follow that narrative, it's those that are already digitally included that would get those benefits. So is there a way we can provide micro inclusion really for the, as they say, bottom of the pyramid? How do we go back to the woman who has a small tomato corner shop, or the man who does a small cobbler business, perhaps not so literate, to show them the data at that micro level. Is there a way we can solve that problem? Yes, we've gotten them to have a device, perhaps accept payment, perhaps some back-end system is created all this intelligence. How do we then take that back to them at that level and ensure that they are digitally included, but they are not technologically excluded, based on your new term that you've created?
So I think it's quite interesting because in terms of going to the micro level and making sure that everybody is part of the movement, right, is we need to be more creative in terms of how we actually solve the problems, because it's a problem because you have a solution, but you can't give it to the people that you want to offer them to, because they don't generally have the tools to get access to your solution. So the next question is going to be that, okay, what can I do to ensure that these people have access to this? So an example of that is there's this thing that DSN, that's Data Science Nigeria, is working on, which is in terms of personalized education. And how do you get personalized education to somebody that doesn't have a smartphone, right? And they are using a feature phone, say maybe your 3310 and so on, like that. So one of the things that they're working on is, you could have stopped there and said, oh yes, I'm being able to provide these services to majority of the student that has smartphone. But beyond that, going to the grassroots, as you said, the micro level of who are those that still need this but cannot get access to it. One of the things that they did is to say, can we get the personalized education to them via SMS? So if you're using a feature phone, you can still receive an SMS, right? And based on, say, when you get a question or a quiz, right, you answer that, and then you get another question based on whether you answer it correctly or not. If you answer it correctly, you get, say, maybe a other question. If you answer it wrongly, you get a solution to it, but you get maybe a simpler question, right? So that alone includes the people that do not have the smartphone, right? Now, to put it back to the use case that you mentioned, in case of, say, maybe financial inclusion, or trying to get people to see the insights that they can get from the data that's been gathered from them. First of all, we need to be more creative in terms of how we gather data from these people. It's easy to gather data from people that are part of the old tech system, that they use our platform. We're able to see the activity, we're able to see the transaction they made. But for those that, say, maybe still use, cash, and there's really no way for you to have the digital record of what is going on, that would mean that we need to be more creative in terms of how we actually get the data from them. And it's not really something I can say, okay, this is the best way to do it, right? You have to do a lot of experiment, go there, see exactly what is going on. If there's a way to improve what they've been doing so far without necessarily having them to change so much that they wouldn't want to accept what you're bringing on board, right? That would be a really good thing to look into and say, okay, yes, we've identified that there's a problem, but really, how do we solve this problem in the most creative way that includes everybody without necessarily changing too much? That would,
Much. A big part of solving digital divide is always the human resource. You need people to create the content, to teach the content, to create the content, to ensure those who need it have it. In your experience, Arome, I see you've signed up and pitched your tent around some fourth industrial revolution technology, extended virtual reality, and all of the reality part of fourth industrial technology component. What has the skills like been in that space? Because I personally haven't seen a lot of VA/VR projects, AR/VR projects in Africa. There are a few, but it's not as adopted as some of the other technologies. Do you think that where that is kind of lagging behind, or people like you doing a lot of work in that space to drive adoption in that area?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. I would say it has not been easy. Right? It has not been easy pushing a new technology that most people don't even understand. If I ask anybody in this room now who knows what virtual reality is, I bet half will not know what it is, right? So extended reality, even though it's a new technology, pushing it in terms of making people see the benefits has been a huge problem. And for us is now, how can we now do it at a micro level? And like I mentioned earlier, we are now pushing into training people to learn with this tech. Not just training, but making sure they can get access to jobs. We did a training in 2021 in Abuja here, and a lady joined all the way from Lagos. She joined the training all the way from Lagos, and she was able to learn how to build VR experiences in 2 months. And now that lady is working for PwC in Lagos as an XR engineer, right? So those are some of the success stories that we have had over the years. But I would say for new technologies, adoption for us is more or less around orientation. What do people know about VR and AR? How can they use it in their own environment? And we are also targeting things they are used to. Most people have TikTok accounts here. Most people have Instagram accounts, and they use what they call filters. So Instagram filters are more or less micro-level augmented reality experience. So you are having a 3D model in your own environment. You can take pictures with it. You can take videos with it. So those are micro-level adoption. Another issue we are looking at is hardware. Hardware has been a very major problem. An average VR headset, for example, the Quest 2, which is like a headset you put over your face to engage with VR experience, costs around $500, averagely $500. And I remember us saving close to, as at 2019, 2020, we saved close to 50K. So I was saving around then to buy our first VR headset, right? So imagine me saving 50K with my friends to buy a VR headset. So hardware has been a problem, but we are grateful for the ecosystem whereby we have enablers like Meta that have supported VR AR ecosystem in Africa by creating micro labs. So Meta in 2020 created 7 micro labs in Nigeria, spread across some hubs in Nigeria. But like a panelist mentioned earlier, if you walk into those micro labs, you won't see any VR headsets. You won't see any systems because there are no people there to build with it. So accessibility has been a huge problem, but how can we now build talents to run with this technology? How can we build talents to run with this technology? And for us, since 2021, we have been privileged to train close to 1,000 people, both online and offline, to learn how to build experiences. As small as an Instagram filter, they can build it and support local businesses to create digital experiences where they can also make money online.
Thank you so much, Arome. I would have loved to go straight to the whole concept of digital literacy and how we can improve that to drive inclusion. But before I do that, I'd like to ask a question that I don't have an answer to personally. And because you guys are all younger startup folks, maybe you can explain this to me and to the audience. There is this, in most part, lack of tenacity in a number of startups. Start a project, meet a number of challenges, leave it, and hop to the next one. Why is that? Because that's impacting confidence, funding, and reducing success rate in terms of closing the gap, closing the digital divide. Is there a way that problem can be solved? How do we get people to stay the course, solve problems, and bridge this gap? And I'd like to hear from all three of you, in whatever order. I see they're all itchy to answer this one because this is really, really home.
Okay, let me go first. So I think the first thing is most founders don't come mentally prepared when they come into the, for lack of a better word, the solution or the passion that they come to solve. They don't come mentally prepared. And what that means primarily is when you're going to solve a particular problem, you most definitely want to expect there would be challenges, and those challenges can range from a number of things. It could be policies affecting you. It could be the technology you're trying to provide. Like in his case, the audience is not ready to adopt it. It could be financial challenges. For example, there was a whole rain of funding happening just immediately after 2020, early 2022, throughout 2021, and then we went in the complete down raise in 2022, stranded over 2023. Literally this year, nobody's writing checks. And what that means basically is, as a founder, you need to live in the reality of the business that you're in. So it's like trying to say you're a doctor and you don't want to be called in the middle of the night for an emergency. Why? Right? So I feel that's the first problem. Most founders don't come mentally prepared. The second part is, in order to solve some of the problems that we've seen, founders spend a long time trying to solve a problem while time has elapsed and a lot has evolved. For you to not necessarily dwell on it the way you were probably originally planning to do that. So some years back, I think what would be more focused for any business would be, how can you just provide a CRM for your business? How can you just know your customers? So when you see point of sale solutions, it still occupies more than 80% of the point of sale terminals you get to see every day, whereby all you're focused on is, how can I just generate a receipt for you, give to the customer, keep one, and move away. But what are you doing with that data? So you get to see you have a lot of working customers, you don't know their name, you don't understand their buying patterns, you cannot make some kind of upsell from that in the future by having somebody that walk into your store. So I think ultimately what needs to happen for a lot of founders is the narrative of the time lapse needs to be always bear in mind. The second part is they need to come in mentally prepared.
So I think the most important thing usually missing in something like that is the why, right? Like, why exactly do you think this problem is worth solving, right? So for instance, for Fundus AI, which has to do with diabetes care, that's because I've had a lot of experiences with people with diabetes. I mean, even in my family itself, right? So it's a pressing problem for me to solve, and I've seen that, okay, what exactly, so when you're trying to like build a solution like that, especially in health, AI in health, all the policy behind regulation and so on, that would really want to just say, that would really want to make you say, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, right? And then at the same time, you remember the reason why you're doing it. It's basically what keeps you up and say, okay, yes, this actually needs to be solved. And there are a lot of challenges that you know that, yes, you'd have to face. I had to resign from my work because I knew I couldn't do both together. I would have to do one or leave the other one. So I chose the startup instead to say, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And, you know, at the same time, when you don't just look at things at the eye level and you start thinking, because they say ideas don't come fully formed, right? So when we started building Fundus AI, it was a subset of diabetes problem that we were trying to solve, right? And there was a lot of challenges to that because, like I said about the tech divide, if you're just trying to solve one thing and not generally looking at the whole thing entirely, you're not generally solving a problem, right? So because you have a why behind what you're doing, you're always constantly asking yourself the question that, how can I improve what I'm doing right now? What exactly can I offer that I'm not currently offering right now? And if you get a setback, instead of feeling, you know, I mean, yes, it's fine to feel down and all those things, right? It comes with the job. You ask yourself the question, how can I improve on what I've been doing so far, right? And I've seen that a lot. It has happened to me a lot, right? And that's why we've evolved from, you know, just preventing blindness in diabetes to building an ecosystem around personalized diabetes care. So I think when you have the why and it's pressing enough, right, you'd be able to push through.
Yeah, the diabetes is a bit personal for me because my dad has been managing diabetes for several years, couple of decades. And I was with him just last weekend. You know.
Please have him on our ecosystem.
So absolutely, and I have some data to give you, you know, that I've been having from his care for some time. Yeah, so definitely I'll sign up. Guaranteed.
Okay. For me, I would say is two things personally. Founders need to know when they are building a nice to have and a must have, right? Nice to have in terms of leveraging maybe emerging tech, but is it actually solving a real problem? Must have is I must use the application in a day at least. For example, Flutterwave built Send by Flutterwave, right? An application whereby those that are in abroad can change money and transfer down to Nigeria. When I was outside the country, I was in the app every 2 weeks because I needed to send money back home. So that's a must-have. And I feel founders need to leave that bubble whereby if it's not working, just let it be, right? We need to embrace failures most times. And we need to celebrate failures if possible, but you learn from it and you build from it also. The second one is the economy. The economy. I read a data analytics whereby the spending ratio of Nigerians is dropping by the day. People don't have extra money for apps anymore. It's now transportation, electricity, feeding. That is their core. And if your application is not around some of those core, how do you get access to that money, right? If the economy is better, look at for example, maybe the first world nations. They have extra cash to burn. Somebody can go on eBay and buy something crazy because he has that extra cash to spare, right? If the economy is better, Nigerians will have more money and they can spend on applications and experiences that they would love to do.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But the reality, the thinking is also that when things turn out this way in most economies, that's where a lot of successful startups jump into the circle. So if people can think of things to do now that can meet today's reality, perhaps as things improve, they get the upside of the changes in the economy. Now, we'll take the final round of questions and then we can begin to do our wrap-up so that we can get a couple of comments and questions from the audience. And we'll be focusing on digital literacy as a tool to bridge the gap. People in the audience, including Doctor, have been so passionate about redefining what education means, right? The term education has been updated to include digital literacy. So you can read, you can write, it's not sufficient. You should be able to use basic digital tools as well, phone, computer, touch screens at airport, basic stuff, and should be considered as part of education today. Now, how do we, considering our ever-increasing out of school in Nigeria and most of Africa, but when it comes to digital literacy and education, Nigeria automatically becomes the reference point, right? Because it looks like we are the rallying point in Africa for most of this education and literacy challenge. How do we solve this problem once and for all? You know, as you were talking, I was wondering, perhaps you need to partner with Doctor and maybe a single or a set of VR lab or room to educate all civil servants. So they just take turns to go there every week and they don't, I don't know. But we need to come up with something to just solve this problem and move forward once and for all. How do we address this problem? Because if we don't, it doesn't matter how much we talk, what we say, we will just continue to be a consumer nation or continent. So this is your chance to be president of Nigeria. Manifesto. How do you solve this problem?
All right, so I think one interesting, and I had this conversation with someone in my community about how to change the landscape of education from what it is right now. And he mentioned something quite interesting, which is in terms of gamifying the learning process, right? Learning itself, to a lot of people, it's a daunting task. And, you know, without generally knowing the different techniques to learn, like meta learning and all those things, it's not easy, right, to sit for a couple of hours and, you know, try and understand a particular concept and so on. But we found out that gaming, it's really something that some people really find interesting, right? What if we infuse the learning, right, into the game itself, something that somebody would generally be open to do, right? And then you convert the knowledge base into a gamified format for them to actually go about doing that. I mean, we've seen quite, I've seen quite a lot of, not a lot, but some startup working in that aspect as far as, well, generally for kids, mostly for kids, right? But outside of the kindergarten or primary school use cases, we're talking about things in medicine or in business school, right? One interesting thing could be that what if we have a gamified business environment whereby instead of having to go, and yeah, no shades to business schools, but instead of having to like maybe go through business school, you have an environment where you can have real life business scenarios and you're supposed to actually provide solutions to them. And for every single thing you do, you learn one or two things about business concepts, right? Say maybe pitching to an investor, learning your customer value chain and all those other things. And your task in the game is basically to stop or prevent a particular company from going bankrupt, or to build a startup from ground zero to wherever it's going to be at the end of the day. And you have this virtual environment where you are able to interact with NPCs, which is non-player characters, say AI systems that can generate multiples of scenarios for you as to, you know, what are the possible things that you can find in the business world and how do you actually tackle them. I think if we look at all those creative ways of learning, it will make it a bit more fun to actually learn for those that are not generally inclined to stay a long time or trying to learn a concept like that. I think that would be good.
Yeah, so while gamification is a very interesting angle, very similar to the concept of how people learn real estate from Monopoly, right? I think a better way to see it is the Nigerian factor is what's in it for me. Most people are only committed to things that they know and they're very certain and they're clear about the benefits that comes directly to them. So if it's just very similar to the red car theory where you say, if you ask someone how many red cars do you see on your way here, and the person goes, oh, I can't remember, but I tell you, I give you $1,000 if you tell me how many you see in the next 5 minutes. And they'll definitely tell you that number. So while we look at the educational concept, I think the most important, not just educating people on the divide or bridging the divide itself, I think we need to educate on the realistic benefits on what people stand to get when they get to be bridged by that divide. So if you tell me, for example, if you get to understand how to maybe design, right, or as a product designer, what's in it for me? It's not just learning how to design. Why do I need to do that? If I now start giving you possibilities and saying, oh, you can probably build simulated user experiences for mobile technologies, for let's say wristwatches or web, and you can get really paid from that. And I can show you clear scenarios, a clear pathway to that solution. And I'm not just talking from a financial benefit standpoint. I'm saying even it's from a fulfillment standpoint, right? So if someone can clearly understand, or if you tell the doctor, I think you want to learn how to utilize AI or other form of technology or VR technologies to be able to perform surgeries better, then you see the doctor get invested in understanding how these technologies work in multiple cases. So I think we need to invest a lot in the benefits, clearly telling people the benefits. The second part I think would be very interesting to help bridge this divide is quite similar to what he has suggested, where you have private sector and government institutions collaborating to be able to empower people to have that divide. The reason for that is most times people can't help themselves, so we need to create an enabling environment to be able to allow those ecosystem functions happen. And it's not enough to say you have hubs. Most of the hubs are a little bit, they're quite shallow-minded, because then you see it's the fancy startups, the ones that seem that they have a very good idea that can be able to key into those moments. But if we really want to have a digital divide, we need to be able to create use the church mentality, open the doors to everyone to be able to say, regardless of who you are or what your educational background or your level is, you can come and get the benefit of this.
I like the church mentality. I'm sure it's same for mosque mentality too. So yeah, so that sounds interesting. That's a nice one. All right, you haven't.
Okay, for me, I would first of all align with what he said on gamification. Gamification is very important, and for us in our own space, using virtual reality and augmented reality is a very big benefit. My sister that is studying medicine, most of the time she spends a lot of hours going physically to the training hospitals to learn. And imagine we could have a virtual experience where they can do that practically, fail several times and perfect it before physically going to the hospital. And I would like to say that we're actually building experiences in Nigeria. There is a startup called StanLab. So what they are focused on is how they can help schools that don't have well-equipped science laboratories to do that virtually. So most parents have devices. The kids can key into those devices and undertake chemistry practical, like a fully gamified chemistry practical using their mobile phones and their PC. And also, as regards the business use case, I would like to say that like some business schools abroad have what they call business use case challenges, where you are teamed up, so different classmates, and you are given a virtual company with virtual currencies to build that business. Like, it's a very serious competition whereby you have to understand what your other teammates are doing to make more money, and it's very, very impactful for them. My second point will be on empowering the core of the system, which is the people, right? The people needs to be empowered. I'll give an example. My mom, she's a teacher, and her job is to go to some of the public schools in Abuja to evaluate what they are doing right. And most of the years, she does that using paper and pen. So imagine going to close to 100 schools, writing on paper and pen. But nowadays, the government have empowered them with tablets, whereby they can go there physically, just tap in what they want to tap in on that tablet, take pictures, and just send it. You get, so the government have empowered now my mother to have more time to spend at home, instead of being tired every time when she comes back. And I feel if you can empower the core of the system, which is the people, teachers can train better, they can teach better, and we can have scientists from the ground up instead of them just finishing and trying to learn what science is.
Thank you. Abel, if you're there. You know, I like the fact that you brought in the teachers. By the way, my mom is a retired teacher from many years ago as well. And, you know, the idea of solving digital literacy, many argue that instead of focusing on the student, or rather than focusing more on the students, that you will get a better result if you focus on the teachers more. Because the teachers, if empowered and have the access, the tools, the skills, are the one who will be left to then mentor and teach this student. So most solutions you see are designed to targeting straight the student and cutting off the teachers. I see we're in the doctor's domain and he's shaking. You have a chance to comment on that. We'll also call in the audience for one or two comments. So perhaps we will leave you to address that during question and answer. How do we ensure that teachers are better? Abel, if you're there, Abel, I would like you to take a quick question around digital literacy, your experience in Africa, and how digital literacy can help resolve the issue of the technology divide. And once you're done with the question, we'll take your closing remark afterwards.
Yes, I just want to give a quick reminder here for innovators in Africa, not to put aside the voice interface, because voice interface is coming to a new age. So we're going to see in the next few months or years localized test-free user interface, because most people, when we talk about digital inclusions, we also think we only think about touch devices. But just remember the CD, the Alexa, you can give a high-level goal to Alexa, and Alexa can help you accomplish that goal. So we are heading to this stage whereby it will now become viable even for local African native languages to have this kind of agents, this kind of secure smart AI helpers that can help an illiterate or semi-literate users achieve more than they could achieve without use of the AI-enabled tools. And the interface doesn't have to be touch, so they can engage in normal dialogue in local native languages. Because of the natural language processing, natural language understanding, what is happening is that the compute power is just got viable for us to run this kind of app at the edge, even on devices. And they don't have to be actually the smart devices. Even IoT devices can be devised just with the microphone and connected to the edge or to the cloud, provided that we have this kind of architecture that is a kind of software agent or a smart AI helper. So the architecture is the defining moment. If this architecture helps the users achieve a goal, maybe learning goal, maybe some financial goals or some transaction goals, this is now becoming possible and viable. And it's a great opportunity for Africa.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. So in closing, if you can, I'd still like to start with you, Abel. As a closing remark, just to look at the landscape for Africa, we try to bridge the digital divide, when it was just simple access to computer. Then internet came on board, and we're still trying to bridge the digital divide and internet penetration. Now we're talking about technology divide with AI. So it looks like catching up on this digital divide is a mirage. I'd like everyone's comment on it as you close with your closing comment. Does Africa truly have a chance to bridge the divide once and for all now with the benefit of AI and taking advantage of the technology?
Yes, I think we don't have to play catch up. I think we can even leap ahead. Just like Africa didn't go through landline phones, we leapfrogged to mobile devices, connected wireless devices. So there is a great chance that it's a great opportunity for Africa to leap ahead instead of playing catch up.
Thank you very much, Abel. Thank you.
Yeah, so just speaking to the last conversation you had, don't entirely think it's a mirage. I think it's two battles fought on different fronts, whereby we are trying to compete and be as equals to first world developing country or developed countries, and at the same time we want to be able to support the marathon of pulling those that have not been able to adopt so much of these digital technologies, as the case might be. But then the thing is, of course, time lapses. So you see, as you said, computers came out first, or phones came out at some point, and then computers, and now internet, and now you're seeing more technologies are evolving. So it's not necessarily the same type of digital divide. It's different types of digital divide over time. And I think what we need to be able to effectively do is celebrate the little victories we've had, but more importantly, not give up the fight, investing in trying to bridge that gap.
All right, so as far as if we do stand a chance to, be a part of this technological evolution, I think it's more of a problem with implementation, because if you look at, so somebody made a comment earlier, not here, the first session, about there's very little people that understand AI, right, in Nigeria, and that couldn't be more wrong. First of all, for me personally, I'm an AI expert, and I'm not just talking about maybe building apps around large language models. I'm talking about understanding the algorithm behind actually training those models from scratch or fine-tuning them, right, across all the different architectures that are available. And I'm not just the only use case. There's a whole lot of other people as well that are just like doing their own thing, trying to say make money off of the skills that they have, right? And we have a lot of problems that can be solved in Nigeria, but unfortunately, the value placed on AI in Nigeria is super low, right? For a tech that can literally change any industry, right? The value placed on it is extremely low. Companies will offer you very little amount of money to build AI systems for them, and you, as the person that understands the value of what you're building, you definitely go somewhere else to actually apply that skill set. So if we're saying there's a problem to be solved and AI can solve the problem, the question is, what are we willing to do about that, right? There's this pocket of people scattered everywhere, right, in Nigeria itself. If we bring them together, right, and we have the problem, we have the human resources as well, and then have people tackle it, and then ask the question of, do we have startups already working on these problems already, right? Can we bring them on board and give them the necessary tools or funding to actually scale up whatever it is that they are building, which is what you would see in most developed countries, what you see in Silicon Valley, where government actually supports the startups, not just by saying there's a competition out there. I'm saying look for them, bring them in, and look at what they are doing and do whatever it is that is needed to ensure that they actually succeed, right? In addition to having those human resources that are already available, scattered everywhere, bring everybody together, look at the problem, understand the different value chain in the problem you're trying to solve, and have these people who have the skill set to actually go ahead and solve the problem. I think that's the only way we can actually make any progress whatsoever. Let's forget about the entire creating a strategy or anything, or trying to even regulate something. If you don't have something to build, you can't necessarily regulate. US started coming up with regulations after ChatGPT came out, and then we're looking into AGI to say that, oh, if we don't actually stop the progress of this might lead to this. But if we don't have anything yet, right, there's really no need for any of the, fancy regulation that, it's not really applied to anything yet. So look at the human resources that we have, look at the problems, bring them together, and let's provide a solution. Implementation, that's all we need.
Okay, I would say I'm a very, very big believer in Africa. Africa is blessed, right? We are blessed with tremendous human resources, amazing experts, and innovators, but we first need to start from the ground up. I feel government is a major player in this. If government is not on board, man, it will be very difficult. And like he said earlier, he has been going to need for close to 10, 13 years just for them to adopt a policy that will benefit us as Nigerians. If government can come on board early, if they can see the potentials of these technologies, not just they have a conference, they call startups, they give them money, no. They need to support us from the ground up, right? We are all amazing talents on this panel, plus our boss here, right? But I feel we need that support from the get-go. Go to America and the rest. They are being supported right from the universities, right? The government funds their project right from the universities. And secondly, I would say is manpower. Like he said, we have amazing talents, we have amazing human resources. But if somebody that goes to university to study computer engineering or computer science cannot really do something on a computer, it doesn't really make sense. We need to empower them from when they are in the universities. I remember when I was in secondary school, I had a technical drawing teacher. He can draw a perfect line without using a ruler, right? And he's doing that because he loves teaching. He loves empowering talents. So if we can get government on board early, support the amazing talents we have on the continent, Africa is the next Silicon Valley. It is the next Silicon Valley. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to appreciate Ndu, Abdumalik, and Arome, and Abel, of course, who's online. We've had two lovely and wonderful sessions, and I'd like to give a closing remark of my own, just to mention 2-3 points, perhaps. The first is, again, I like the church mentality. The first is that we've had a significant number of successes in Africa, and there are a lot more successes ahead of us, and we're sure our young people will break those new grounds and get those new barriers down. So definitely, when we're looking at quantum AI, I have no personal fears or serious worries that we won't be able to do it. In fintech, a lot of the successes we've attained, the developed worlds are catching up with us in a number of ways. A number of the services we have introduced, we are leading in that area, and we're sure that if we apply the same amount of innovation, reward, and incentives to other sectors, Africa will again demonstrate that innovation can come and rise from Africa. And looking at the edutech and the whole revolution in education, earlier we have been reminded to engage government. I would like to re-echo that request, that young people and old people should engage government more. For instance, I observed, I don't know if it's true or not, a policy coming out from UI about increasing school fees and all of that. I don't know if it's one of those social media fake stories. But if we were to revolutionize education in Africa, especially higher education, I would like to see, for example, a situation where government can experiment with withdrawing funding significantly for some of the higher institutions. My personal proposal would be experiment with perhaps the first 5 first-generation university, UI of Ibadan, UI of Lagos, UI of Ife, UI of ABU, Zaria, and maybe UNN. Over 5 years, withdraw funding from them completely. Allow them to increase their fees to commercially competitive fees, attract quality teachers and investors or whatever they need. But in those 5 years, give every student who is already enrolled as student and those who have selected the school who get admission that year, free carriage scholarship to go out. So government would know, okay, I'm carrying you on for the next 5 years, and after that you're on your own. The school will have a 5-year transition period, and then you can try it and see and encourage them to compete with what the rest of the world will do. You are not likely to get a lot of pushback from students because those who are already in are guaranteed of exit if you pass your exams. So if you know that you want to spend 10 years in school, just know after 5-6 years you're on your own. You need to go look for school fees. How we formulate policies, engagement is necessary. And that's why I think that solving those problems, and I say that because, as we know, government does not have, another challenge I have with startups is that government does not have money to carry a lot of startups on their shoulder the way we think they can. They just don't have the money. But there's something government has, which government can make available to startups, and that's markets. I would rather government give startups markets. If government can do a selective process, a selective bidding process or whatever, and select 5 startups that would run public health institution or at whether primary, secondary, or tertiary, look at their technology and say, okay, fine, we allow you do this, and allow people who have just give access to markets. If a startup comes with an efficient way to manage water, okay, get the startup to have access to all or as many, and let it make sure it's local, indigenous technology. Access to markets will encourage people who have real problems to solve and have real technology to solve those problems to take on. Not all the startups will be successful, but the ones who solve problems in Nigeria, we go on to solve them in the rest of West Africa. And Nigerian government should stop giving money free of charge to other countries. Go to Chad, give them $500 million, and then carry Nigerian companies to collect the money back like China and the rest of Europe are doing to us. But you need to give them access to your own market first. They grow, their hands are strong, like my banking people will say, and then you export them and their skills and talents to other countries and repatriate those investments back. These, I think, are more practical, more useful intervention than government can and should do, rather than writing fancy policy document like my panelists have said, not me. All right. On that note, I'd like to thank you for listening and for your time. And tomorrow, we'll be starting the conference with a demonstration by John Igato. Yeah, quantum doctor, on demonstrating the quantum doctor solution. So please be here by 9 a.m. We'll start 9 a.m. prompt with the demonstration. It's something you don't want to miss. We talked about quantum AI earlier, and we had a bit of time to look at that. So very quickly, we'll be able to take 1 or 2 questions, and we have to end in 3 minutes. So just 2 questions, please. Again, 1 comment. Is that a lady? Okay. Okay, if we have time, we'll come to you. A minute each, please. 1 minute so that we can close by 3 exactly. Thank you.
If we are still running on STEM education in Nigeria, for our information, STEM education was of last century. So effort should be geared towards STEM D. Yes, where the STEM forms the foundation, right? Then digital literacy is the main thing now. That is the education that comes with what we call hands-on, right? Everybody's talking about it. And if we manage that, implement that very well, there's no demarcation between TVET and any other system of education, because everything is now hands-on. That's number 1. So if we want to actually deal with digital divide, we need to integrate digital literacy into all levels of education in Nigeria. Number 3, what is digital literacy? Everybody is talking about it. You need to know what you are talking about. Digital literacy is not just basic skills. It has 5 components. 1, digital literacy basic, IC3 standard. 2, communication skills. That is the critical career skills. Number 3, you need to be entrepreneurial and be enterprising. That is entrepreneurship for small business. Be able to recognize opportunities. That is number 3. Number 4 and 5 are career specific. It's either you are on predominantly IT career paths or IT supported. Let me leave it to that because of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next person.
Okay. Hi. So my question is, especially listening to the panelists, they seem to be doing a lot of private initiatives. My question is really around data collation and data grouping. So we have a lot of private institutes and private initiatives that are, call it, bearing the burden of bridging this digital divide. How exactly do we come to a point where we say we collate all of the data that has been collected and actually use that data for national use and national efficiency? So is it going to be a government initiative, or as private individuals, do we also have to take the lead in actually forming this data collation and data hub?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ame from Africa Young Leaders Empowerment Initiative. Mine is a comment, actually. What I wanted to say, we respect what you said concerning the exporting talent. I think the Minister of Communications, Innovations, and Digital Economy has put up this program called the 3 Million Technical Talents. I don't know if we are aware of that. So basically, it's to train 3 million Nigerians in technical talent and then export them to do that. So I think it's to address what you said earlier. Then secondly, to the Mr. Ibrahim, I think when I was trying to apply for my master's, I applied to one of the universities in London, and the open day was actually by virtual reality. So you can see that from here, I was able to navigate all through the university in virtual reality. So can it also be applied to our systems in Nigeria? That's just what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I also agree with you. When I was looking for an apartment online for my master's, I actually toured my entire apartment using VR. So I was in Nigeria, but I was able to see the room I was going to stay in Belgium without traveling at that moment. So I feel the tech is amazing, but for adoption in Nigeria, most institutions are already doing that. The Art and Cultural Council has been able to digitize some of our heritage sites in Nigeria using VR, and that is also accessible online. So we are doing it, but in a more or less micro scale, and I feel with time it will be more adopted across several institutions.
Okay.
All right, so speaking to the question she asked around whose job is it? Is it private or government in terms of how you bring the data together and what exactly you do with it so that everybody, everybody benefits? I'm just going to use a use case of the multilingual large language model that they are planning to train here in Nigeria, and they've been looking on how they will gather data or maybe requesting people to actually provide data, right? But in actual sense, the data is already available, right? I'm talking from radio station, from TV stations. There's news every day in Hausa, in Igbo. Well, I don't know in Igbo, but I know there's news like that. So all of that is data already, right? The only problem is with, not we, but they don't know how to get the data. And the question is, how do we get this data that is already available to us, right? Do we need people from the private sector? Do we need people from the government? And most importantly, I think it's actually the combination of both. You can see really you can find experts in private sectors, right? And the government sectors will give you access to things like NTAs or AITs or, all the other news channels and so on, where you can now have this synergy of resources and data where people can now tell you, okay, for all of these things, this is how we get the data. And by the time they have the data, then we can easily train the large language model where we can then open source it, and anybody that wants to build a system can build a system that is, and make it available in Hausa, Igbo, or Yoruba, or any other language that we want.
Okay, so while it's interesting to look at the synergy between private sector and government, I think I would like to look at it a little bit away from even AI and just bringing it back to the grassroots of data, raw data. And what that means, first of all, is for you to meet somebody at where they're at, or let's assume you want to buy, a practical example would be you want to get something from, you want to get tomatoes, right? You have to go to the markets, so you find the people where they are. So basically, we need a situation whereby research institutes need to also step up. They're going to play a very heavy role in that. So basically, look at them as the middlemen to be able to provide that bridge. But what it also means is that they need to be able to structure, whether we want to look at them as APIs or infrastructures that allow for connectivity, like he has mentioned. So we would now have a very interesting scenario whereby as a business, you're open to the idea of sharing data on a very, at least, reasonable level that is not exposing or dangerous to your customers. You can reach out to a research institute and be like, oh, you know what, I can share with you. And you already have an infrastructure that allows you to communicate with me seamlessly. And in like manner, whoever it is that needs to utilize that information from the pool of the research institutes can also do the same. So I think it might stray a little bit away from just a government private sector intervention to a research construct whereby that consortium can allow for the exchange between all parties.
On that note, I would like to thank the panelists. On that note, I would like to thank the panelists and that note, I would like to thank the panelists and everyone else. We've come to an end of this session. Again, tomorrow, 9 a.m., we will start with a demonstration of the Quantum Doctor platform. How do we close? As the normal comes to formally close the session, let me just quickly say on data and on government and PPP that for me, private sector giving, and I'm talking from experience, private sector giving data to public is not an issue. The issue is always a misaligned economic interest. We have said data is gold. Will private sector give gold to government, and then the government people will collect instead of using it for common good, and then use it to make money or share the gold? The answer is no. So if private sector people are going to give data to government, it has, the government entities themselves cannot create a business model around that government and cut off the private sector people who provide the data. This again and again and again is what I see in the play. The way, unfortunately, most government data acquisition or integration or platform acquisition initiatives are positioned. You position the private sector to bring it almost for free, and then create a model where you or your friends make money off it without, so those guys just pull back. And this is why I think that most private sector people don't participate in a lot of these data sharing or data giving initiative free of charge. So if government is create the right models around them, definitely participation will increase. So that's my view. Thank you very much,
Bosun. Thank you very much. Please, can we appreciate them? I would like to invite Doctor to just, Doctor, so you can join them so we can have a quick picture. We're rounding up now. The conference continues tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and we'll start 9 a.m. sharp. The conversation